Hey, everybody. I'm Jesse, and welcome to another edition of Gen X Thinks Live. And Vintage, hey, how's it going, Vintage? Yeah, Snagglepuss, Yogi, Boo Boo, Wally. Yep, they're all there. Methylene blue. Yeah, I've heard of that methylene blue. I actually ran across a thing where a guy turned blue by taking it. I don't know if that's a legitimate story, if that actually happened. I know how they name things. The word blue in there doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the color, so I don't know. I take that with a grain of salt with that guy that turned himself blue by taking that stuff. I'm not really sure what it is, though. I haven't done a lot of research on methylene blue. Not sure what it is or what it's supposed to do. KS, what's up, KS? Glad to see you here. So, what is it? What's the point of taking it, Vintage? How is it supposed to help you? Like I said, I've heard of it in passing. I've heard, you've just seen it on the internet and stuff, but I've never really looked into it in any depth at all. We probably all have our things. I take about a quarter of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper mixed in uh, grapefruit juice every morning. That's my my potion of choice. Mellow corn 100 proof KS. How y'all doing this morning or this evening for you, Vintage, over there on the bottom of the world? I've just been put in a lot of hours this damn week. Holy crap. A lot of hours at work, so I'm going back here in about an hour or so after this live stream. Change my clothes and head off to work again. It's good though. It's an enjoyable job. What I'm doing now, this job I'm doing now, I enjoy it. And it's outside. I like being outside. After 6 years being sober, had enough what? Had enough of the 100 proof or had enough of sobriety? Alright, Vintage, I'll look it up. Oh, alright, KS. Yeah. So where are you out of, KS? I know Vintage is out of Australia, and I'm down here in Florida. Oh, alright. Washington, really? Okay. Yeah, I lived in Washington years ago when I was late teens, early 20s in the Yakima Valley. So you probably know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I ran across this thing where there was an argument online and this one guy was talking about experts. And that got me thinking, what the hell is an expert? Where do you get this tag expert? 'Cause this one guy was saying, "You're not an expert. You're not an expert in the subject." So what the hell is an expert? Who is that? Do you get that tag from a third party, like out of college or something? So there's a board of college directors or something who tell you you're an expert in something. Is that how we get this expert thing? Because especially the topic was history. How I don't understand how anybody honestly can call themselves an expert in history when we don't know what the hell happened. All we know is what somebody wrote about what happened, and we don't know what their motives were. We don't know what, were they trying to make money? Were they trying to stay alive? Did someone have a gun at their head? You know what I'm saying? Were they just out for notoriety, or were they just, trying to record the absolute factual truth for posterity? We don't know any of that. So you read a book that somebody else wrote, and then all of a sudden you're an expert because somebody else agrees. The right people agree with that line of logic that was down in the book. So then you get an expert label, and anybody who contradicts that or questions that your line of thought there is an outsider, a conspiracy theorist, or some shit like that. And it's a funny place for the world to be in now, where we're not allowed to question anything, and we're sure as hell not allowed to question the experts. So, oh, okay, all right, KS. R. Snyder, glad to see you here. R. Snyder's out of Michigan. It's still cold up there, Snyder? Yeah. Hey, Bucky. Yeah, Snyder. Well, I think we're all experts in something then. And a lot of times they're conflicting. Some people say they're experts in virology and shit, and because they read some shit online, and there's the crux of it there, because you can read shit online, read a bunch of weird stuff online, and now consider yourself kind of an expert. And then there have been people who have been brought up in the system and taught what they were told was right, and they consider themselves experts. So, I don't know. There's a lot of questions, especially about shit that we don't fully understand, like history. A lot of stuff has been written down, and then it's been translated over and over and over again. So you read a book that's been, translated 5 or 6 times from, Latin to French to whatever, and now you're reading it in English, and you're supposed to be an expert on the topic. It was written 2,000 damn years ago, and, it's just that kinda stuff just blows my mind, 'cause the experts honestly have no idea what happened. The whole story that he or she is reading, could be completely fiction. Maybe the author would just made the shit up. He was just gonna tell a story. It might have been a play for all they know. Because they had plays and shit back then. So it might have been a play that they just made up completely out of their heads, and there's no way they would be able to tell. So that kind of shit. I don't know. I don't trust any of that shit. I mean, I kind of broadly go along with history, kind of the timeline with the Mongols and the Vikings and the Romans, and kind of broadly where they're placed. But I don't really get into the whole buy into the whole mainstream narrative, the details of how history happened and all that, because it's impossible to know. None of us were alive to be there. So yeah, KS, we're the experts. Yeah. Yeah, there's something there. R. Snyder just hit the nail on the head. I could be an expert on collecting Native American artifacts because I've been collecting them for 45 plus years. And the wording there is important. I could be an expert in collecting Native American artifacts because he's actually done it. He went out there with his hands and collected the shit. So yeah, I would call him an expert in that. He probably knows shit that I've never even heard of about the little techniques and different things about collecting Native American artifacts, you know? Me and him could go walking through the woods and I could kick a rock and he realizes that that's a damn artifact and I wouldn't even know what the hell I was looking at. So yeah, collecting them, yes, I would say that. Now there are experts on how they used them back in the day and all this shit, back in the Stone Age and all this stuff, and they have no idea. They weren't alive back in the Stone Age. They're only guessing. They're making up these hypotheses and these theories about how shit was done from cave paintings and all this shit, and they have no idea. But they can't admit they don't know because then they wouldn't be experts. The only thing I'm an expert in is how to boil eggs, probably how to put food in my mouth, and it's shit, because that's what I've been doing every day of my life. So I don't know. It's crazy when I can go down that path for a long ways to explain why I just I don't believe I know anything now, you know what I'm saying? Except what I've done with my own 2 hands, and I've lived in my own life. All this other stuff that somebody wrote down 500 years ago, shit, I don't know. I don't know if he's, you know, full of crap or was trying to impress some woman or what, you just don't know. So, yeah. But then what gets me though is those people reading these books, uh, they'll 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 point out somebody else who read something that somebody else wrote, right? And say, "You're an idiot. You're not an expert because you read something that somebody else wrote. You didn't read what I read that somebody else wrote." You know what I'm saying? It's just ridiculous, but that's where we are. I read Smith. I'm the expert. You read Jones. You're an idiot. Okay, what I don't know why Smith is so much better than Jones. They're both writing about the same shit. They just have different opinions on it. And that's perfectly valid because the shit happened, 1500 years ago. That's all you can have is opinions. We don't know facts. Oh, salmon traps? KS? Yeah, that sounds cool. I actually read the book Alaska. Now I'm not going to be able to remember the author's name, but he wrote Hawaii and he wrote a bunch of different books like that about different states. And yeah, I read about those salmon traps and how they were using them. But that was fiction, so but I hope he based it on some fact, some those traps that they found at least, and made up, kind of made up how they used them and stuff. Oh, that's pretty cool though. Yeah, vintage. I mean, I'm that way with religion too. If you want to, but it's the exact same thing. Somebody wrote some stuff down 5,000 years ago or whatever, and it's been translated. I don't know how many times to get to English, and so that's where we're at now with it. And people can use it as a tool. They can twist it and get it into a way to manipulate people. So organized religion, in my opinion, is eh, I don't know. I don't want to sit here and bash organized religion because a lot of people are go to church and stuff. I just don't like doing that kind of stuff. But for the people who want to quote stuff written down in the past and then bash everybody else who thinks something differently, I no matter where they are, what subject matter they are, I think I'm not on board with that. Sea level rose, what? The sea level rose recently or rose 10,000 years ago or whatever? KS. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Snyder. They piled up stones. Okay, yeah. Yeah, exactly, vintage. I mean, I don't bash anybody for believing. The only thing I bash people for is bashing other people for what they believe, what rabbit hole they wanna go down. You know what I mean? That's fine. You believe if you wanna read Smith and take that as a fact, and he's the holy gospel of, uh, Roman history, then go ahead, read Smith, but don't bash me because I read Jones, you know what I mean? That now you're acting like an idiot. You're acting like a 5-year-old kid, and you're supposed to be an expert who's an adult. So, yeah, that kinda shit just gets under my skin. Oh, okay, 10,000, yeah, alright. Yeah, that stuff is fascinating. I read no, I watched a video on the ancient tribes along the Pacific Northwest, and that was awesome, yeah. They had a unique culture over there because they lived so close to the ocean with abundant food and all this stuff, so they had more time on their hands to, to do things, to make, a richer culture where, inland where people had to hunt deer and stuff for food, they couldn't just scoop it out of the sea. So they didn't have all that free time that the people on the coast did, which is an interesting thing to think about. Yeah, I've seen that too, KS, the islands. Yeah, that's insane. You wonder how the hell they did it back then. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard those theories about the sea level falling right after the sea level rising right after the ice age, because during the ice age, a lot of the water was locked up in ice, and Florida was bigger, and that there are actually continents that are underwater now that supposedly used to be inhabited. There are like cities underwater and stuff, and they have a theory about that's where Atlantis was in on one of those continents that got submerged. Yeah, KS, they are. Those islands are crazy. Yeah, I've watched those documentaries on that stuff, and that just insane. And the more they find out, like when we were kids, they had pyramids in Egypt. Now they're finding pyramids that, that have been covered with dirt and their plants and just look like a hill, but they're finding that there are pyramids under these damn dirt piles. So they've uncovered all these pyramids all over the world now that we know about. And now we realize that there were pyramids in Mexico, South America, Asia, all over the place. They built these pyramids. What the hell? That's a big coincidence. Oh, let's build a pyramid. You know what I'm saying? Hell, they have them made out of dirt in Mississippi and stuff. They've got these mound pyramids and that big snake up in Ohio. That stuff, I don't know. The coincidence there is pretty damn big. There's something going on there. I wish I knew what it was. That's one of the things that I'd really love to know about is why everybody all over the world built pyramids just kind of coincidentally without they didn't have any supposedly didn't have any contact with each other. They didn't know each other, never talked to each other, all just inspired to build pyramids, right? So, yeah, that's kind of coincidental in my book. Yeah. Yeah, KS. Yeah, they're aligned with the stars, and, there's so much going on with those pyramids, and so there's so many theories about what their purpose was and all this stuff, and we we gave them these names like Queen's Chamber and King's Chamber and all this shit, but that's not what those rooms were called back when they were built. You know what I mean? It might have had nothing to do with a king or a queen. We just gave them these names when we started exploring in there. Oh, we'll call this one the Queen's Chamber. So all that kind of stuff, and how the vents align with the equinoxes and all this stuff. Yeah, yeah. And then how these we've got one, now I'm gonna forget the name of it, but we've got one down in, uh, n there was a tribe of Native Americans in, I think it was Arizona, the Pueblo or something like that, but they had a whole stone city built there that we didn't know about until, well, I didn't know about until here recently. And they had this trade network and all this stuff, and they were basically civilized. And then one day they just vanished. And it just, there's so much going on that we don't understand. I mean, my entire life, I, just with the media and everything, with the three channels when we were kids, my entire life, I just thought Native Americans, indigenous Americans, were, the long hair with the feathers and the the headdress and stuff, riding around on horses and shooting bows, the nomadic, like the Cherokee or the Cheyenne or something like that. But there were a lot of cities in America, in North America, in the United States. There were Native Americans who didn't move around with the seasons, who didn't live in teepees. They lived in cities made out of stone or whatever. So that was really surprising when I first heard that. Yeah, it's crazy to think. My whole idea of what Native American culture was and what was happening was completely off base, completely wrong. There were just a couple of tribes who moved around like that, like the Cherokee and stuff. They had teepees and whatnot, and longhouses and all that. That's just what I thought Native Americans were, back then in history. But no, there were all different kinds. There were nomadic tribes. There were tribes who built cities and built with stone. These elaborate cities. It's crazy. It's crazy to find out all that I didn't know about the land I live in. The history of the land I live in is crazy. Yeah, KS. Yeah, the Pueblo cities. Yeah, again, yeah, crazy amounts of knowledge have been lost. And we were taught the wrong stuff the whole time. We just, they're teaching us this other stuff in school, and they should have been teaching us real shit. I know how much of that stuff I learned in school, and not the school was 100 times better, maybe 1,000 times better when I was a kid. But even then, when it was that much better, they taught me a lot of shit that I never used again in life. Never had a need for it. Never, not once, ever thought about it again. Never needed it again. When they could have actually, let all of us study the stuff we were interested in and become, get a basic proficiency in certain things. But then we could have learned stuff that we actually were interested in and wanted to learn. So, yeah, there's that kind of thing. When I look back at school and all the shit I was taught that I never used ever again in life, that was a monumental waste of time. Jeff 7, what's up, Jeff? Good morning. Glad to see you here, man. Artis, there he is. How's it going? Yeah. Yeah, lied to. Lie through omission. Yeah. Yeah, history class was cool. Social studies would just to me, that was just the most boring shit on the face of the earth. I would skip that class as often as possible when I was a kid. I might be more interested in that shit now, I don't know, but they taught me that shit, and then the upper maths, you know what I mean? Algebra 2 and algebra and all this other shit. Uh, they should teach you get up to algebra and geometry, basic geometry, in my opinion, and then you go on and keep studying math if you want to. Once you understand kinda how, shapes work and a triangle and a square and shit, and once you understand that, you should be free to go study some other shit, not be forced to take, the next step in higher math. That's just a waste. Yeah. Yeah, KS. Our teachers didn't know much better either, and that's the problem. Teachers come up in the system and they you get a teaching job right out of high school or right out of college and you're in the system. You think that's the way it is. It takes a while to wake up from that and look back and say, "That was stupid." You know what I mean? But by the time you've been a teacher for 20 years and you start realizing this shit, it's too late. You know what I'm saying? Now you've got a mortgage, a car payment, you can't quit your damn job or start bucking the system. And I feel like it's designed that way. Every kinda system, uh type of employment is designed that way. So you get in there young, and then if you're locked in there, and then you can't buck. You can't if you do even start asking those kind of questions and stuff, then you end up down in the mail room in the basement or something. You know what I mean? So yeah, yeah. No, I don't either. I don't. I don't use algebra. I don't use I mean, doing the kind of stuff I do, building stuff, and, I use some, I just said it, geometry, you know? I gotta figure out a square and, figure out a circle sometimes and, how to calculate a triangle. I have to do these things in my work sometimes. But a lot of that stuff, by the time I got to it, I had forgotten a lot of it out of from high school, and I had to learn it again anyway. So still, there wasn't a whole lot of point in learning that shit at the age of 15, 16, whatever it was, 14, and, then needing it 30 years later, once or twice or whatever. So, yeah, I had to go back, I still gotta go back and figure it out. So, it's still a waste of time to learn it as a kid. Yeah, KS, yeah. Yeah, but, I mean, a lot of time if instead of learning algebra, you could especially nowadays when information is so readily available. I mean, I can be out on a job and never having, been taught a subject, but I need to figure out how to do something real fast and whip out my phone, and 5 minutes later, I'm an expert. I'm an expert in that shit 5 minutes later, right? So, there's actually no need for this stuff anymore, and there wasn't when I was in school, but there's absolutely no need for it now because if you do need to learn some about a certain subject, you can do it right now because you have it in your pocket. You literally have the information in your pocket. These kids should be being taught how to balance their checkbook and do their taxes and, then the stuff we do in life. How to save money and, how to get the best deal at the grocery store or whatever, this kinda stuff. How to I don't know. I could sit down and make a list of all the shit that would actually help kids in life, but yeah, yeah, straight and level. That and the thing is that they knew how to do that stuff back in the day. They the way they built back in the day, even in the, in the early 20th century and even before that, but shit would be straight, plumb, level, and they made it out with hand tools. You know what I'm saying? They didn't have an electric drill like we do now. They had to drill with elbow grease and saw like this, it was crazy, but they did it. They figured this stuff out and they did it, and that kind of stuff is amazing to me when I look back at all of the physical labor that went into building. And we've got so much technology now, and we build shit like crap now. Literally, it's not even. It's all about money now. If it's about speed, because the more of them you can build, the more money you make that year, and the more successful you are, and all that stuff. So all these contractors and stuff, they just get illegals, hire 30 illegals, and just have them throw these houses up, literally just throw them up in a day, and then slap a half inch of stucco to hide all the imperfections and shit. It's it's just a completely different world now. Yeah, artiste. It's about following rules, authority, and politics. Yeah, it's not about thinking for yourself. And that's the thing that George Carlin tried to tell us. My whole life, he tried to tell me, think for yourself. Don't teach your kids to think. Teach your kids to question everything. Yeah, I believe that's true now. Yeah, math is super important, but those higher maths, uh, KS, and unless you're gonna be a scientist or something, why why make people waste time on that shit, you know? The higher ones, algebra 2 and all this, when you get up into these trigonometry and calculus and all this shit, why does a social worker or a therapist need to know trigonometry if that's what they want to be? Why does a doctor need to know trigonometry? You don't need to know trigonometry to be a doctor, all this kind of shit. So I just I think that the higher maths are a waste of time, and a lot of these other things, I don't even think I don't know how it is now, but they're doing away with. I think it was Oregon. They don't even have to know how to read and write now to graduate high school. And there's another state where they don't have to read and write anymore to become teachers, to get hired as a teacher. You can be illiterate, completely illiterate, and it won't affect your chances of being hired as a teacher. It's just ridiculous now. Yeah, yeah, R. Snyder, they do. Yeah, they do that stuff for us. If we Oh, vintage, a quarter is a quarter of a dollar, 1/4 of a dollar, 25 cents. A dollar is 100 cents, and a quarter is 25 cents. Oh, yeah, that sounds about right, KS. Yeah, navigation was a secret kept away from the crew so they could not mutiny. And I think that's a lot. That right there, navigation was a secret kept away from the crew so that they would not mutiny. I think that happens today. Our government does that to us. You know what I mean? All these systems, the system uh, keeps information from us so that we won't mutiny. I mean, that's a basic principle, a sound logical principle that has been used forever. You keep the masses ignorant to what you're doing so they can't mutiny. They can't, you know, turn on you. You keep them stupid, you keep them dumbed down, you keep them ignorant. And then they, think about it. How do people, you go ask the average normal person, hey, you think we could run this country? Well, I don't, because the people in government are, they're a bunch of idiots. I mean, seriously. And in the United States government, some of these people are stupid. They just say the most stupid shit. I mean, common sense, just, anybody, everybody knows this stuff except these people because they're too damn stupid. But they have us tricked into believing that they're some kind of elite, special people, and they can run the government. We would be just stranded without them. Where I would absolutely love to just drag them all out by their damn ankle, kicking and screaming, and just throw some plumbers and fishermen and waitresses and doctors in there, some nurses and shit in there, and let them run it. Okay, here's what's going on. Do it. If you see, and I bet that it would suck for a while, don't get me wrong, but you put some real people in there and shit would get better just because they would want a better world for their kids. So shit would get better by a lot. It would get worse in the beginning, but it would get better. It might not get that worse. These people, these congressmen and shit, they work what, like 6 days a year, something ridiculous like that. Literally, they work like 6 days a year. So you can't mess up too bad in 6 days out of the year. So that kind of shit. They keep us ignorant and make us think. They don't make us, they trick us into thinking we're stupid and we're incompetent and we're ignorant and we couldn't do it without them. And that's the core of it right there. Yeah. Yeah, Snyder. Bullshit's everywhere and it's bad for you. Yeah, navigating by the stars is a lost art too. Yeah. Yeah, Bucky. People don't get the chance because they're round pegs who are beat into square holes. Now we're not old yet. We will be here pretty quick. We only got about another decade or so. Oh yeah. Yeah, vintage. Yeah, I don't know. You've mentioned that before, vintage. I've got to look at that. But yeah, I read that about the poles shifting and the last 20 years it's really sped up. It used to move at, I forget now the number, but say 10 miles or something a year or something like that, and now it's sped up to like 30 or 40 miles a year. So yeah, the poles are moving and the speed with which they are moving is accelerating. So something's up. Uh, and what I read is that pole flip, it's happened many times in the past. It's just a normal thing in the Earth's evolution, the Earth's lifespan, and it happens. But in the past, when the pole flips. Hell, nobody even really notices. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, it might throw a little upheaval or something with the tides and stuff or something like that, and it'll weaken our electromagnetic field, so the sun can get in a little harsher for a short time. But now, if it happened now, though, that weakened electromagnetic field, it would basically uh, scorch all of our electronics. So if that happened right now, it'd probably be a grid down scenario. Yeah, R. Snyder. That reminds me of that joke when the two hunters go out and a grizzly bear comes running at him, and one hunter gets down and starts pulls some tennis shoes out of his backpack and starts putting them on, and the second hunter looks at him and says, "What are you doing, dude? You're not going to outrun that grizzly bear, man." And the guy's tying his shoes, and he looks up at him and says, "I'm not trying to outrun that grizzly bear. I'm going to outrun you." Yeah, that's one of my favorite jokes. I heard that one as a kid. Yeah, I don't know, KS. I've heard that stuff too. Older people told me that shit about getting older. "Oh, you just wait till you're 40." Then I was 40 and I was still doing the same shit. Now I'm 54 and I'm still doing the same shit. So, I don't know. I don't know if it's maybe it's just me, maybe, but I see other people who are in their 50s and they don't look or act, they're not acting all old and shit. They're still getting around just fine. So, there's a lot of people who are still in great shape. Yeah, well, KS, we're screwed if we go grid down. That depends on who you are and what, humanity itself won't be screwed. We've survived that kind of shit in the past, and we'll continue to survive humanity. Certain civilizations would collapse. Major cities will be holy shit. They will be hellholes. If the grid went down right now, New York, LA, these places, they would just be literal hell on earth. Just yeah, I'm not even going to describe what kind of shit would go down there, but it would be horrifying. But then a lot of people living out in the country and stuff, the Amish wouldn't even know it happened. The Amish wouldn't even know. So it depends on your perspective, where you're at, your skill set, how prepared you are, all these things during a scenario like that, as whether or not you'd be totally screwed or not. If you're living on, the 39th floor of an apartment building in New York, and you've got two bottles of sparkling water and a can of tuna fish in your fridge, and that's it. Yeah, you're screwed. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, Snyder, yeah, that's it. There's been so much upheaval, what we would call from our perspective, humanity and individual humans looking at this stuff, upheaval and chaos and all this stuff, on the earth, because we're looking from a tiny little perspective. But all that stuff is just natural evolution of the earth, you know? I mean, let's say I had a flea on me, right? And I took a shower. That would be a catastrophic upheaval for that flea. But for me, looking at my whole body, my whole day, that could be pleasant. That's just a normal, pleasant thing. So it depends on your perspective. From us down here, ants on the surface of the earth, yeah, it's catastrophic. It's all this stuff. But if you look at the entire life of the earth, it's just natural evolution. The earth gets hotter, the earth cools down. The earth, the poles flip back and forth once in a while. If you look at a at a baseball or something and you're watching this stuff happen, it wouldn't be that big a deal. You'd be like, "Ah, that's cool." But if you're a tiny little creature living on that baseball, it's catastrophic. It's upheaval. It's, we're not gonna survive type of shit. So, it's just normal stuff for the earth is my opinion. Yeah, artiste. Yeah, just faster than the last gazelle. Yeah, okay, as it gets harder. Yep. Yeah, vintage. Yep, you're exactly right. It's a state of mind. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of us, that's one thing about Gen X health. A lot of us have been physically active. We've had physically active jobs and stuff. Not all of us, I'm not saying the whole Gen X wide, but a lot of us have been outside, getting sunshine, breathing fresh air, being physically active. And I think that goes a long way toward our health and our our physical strength and our activity now, because people that, work in an office all day and never see the sun and, just eat a lot of processed food all the time. I mean, they're not going to be as healthy at the age of 50. Yeah. Gen X will survive, our Snyder. Well, just like anything else, it depends. One, it depends on the kind of apocalypse you're talking about, because I might, I might think that I'm gonna survive. I can say that, yeah, I'm gonna survive the apocalypse, but then the asteroid land right on top of my head. So, I'm not gonna survive that. So I more say that we're gonna do well in a post-apocalyptic world. Those of us that are left, who's ever left after the initial impact, whatever the initial scenario that causes the apocalypse, those of us who are left will do better than anyone else, any other age group. Gen X will have the best chance at survival after the initial impact, strike, whatever. Gen Xers will have the best chance. Yeah, we're the ultimate survivors. Yeah, we were. Yeah, that was the whole thing throughout all the '80s and shit. We were gonna be fighting the Soviets. Oh, yeah. Yeah, KS. I mean, honestly, we're in great shape for look at all of the I mean, some not all of us, not every single one of us, I'm not saying that, but as a general rule, 50-year-olds today aren't the same as they were 20 years ago when boomers were turning 50. We're just in better shape. I don't know how else to put it. I'm not to brag or anything, but I'm confident I can go run 5 miles right now, and I'm not gonna say definitely not gonna do it in record time. I'm not gonna do it like I did when I was 20, but I could finish it without stopping, that kinda stuff. I'm I'm physically pretty fit. I've got pain, yeah, and I live with it. Shit, I'm not, I don't spend a lot of time at the doctor's office crying about pain, trying to get pills or anything. If I get some pain from some injury I had when I was 19, I deal with it until it goes away. The shit hurts. I'm not gonna lie. But overall, I'm pretty physically fit guy. Yeah, vintage. Yeah, they'd find out soon enough, because there'd probably be swarms of people coming in to excuse me, swarms of people coming in trying to get what they have. So hopefully they're ready to defend themselves. Yeah. Yeah, true, KS, they do. Yep. Yeah, they have been since high school. But yeah, I think I just remember, when I was 30, looking at older people, looking at people in their 50s and stuff, and they just looked old. They did. They were old. And you're right. But that's part of that thing we have in our heads because 50 used to be old. It used to be, but it's not anymore. We're just not the same as previous generations. And it tells. I mean, I'm walking around even in even younger generations. I'll work around younger people and they just can't. Not saying I do better work or harder work or anything, but they don't have the stamina a lot of times. And it's just, I don't know if it's but I think it's just the way we came up, you know? We're comfortable being outside, so we never shied away from being outside our entire lives. We never shied away from the sunshine. We never shied away from the fresh air. So we'd spend time outside, and it's just healthy, and it's good for your muscles to do shit. It's good for your heart, to walk a few miles to the store or whatever, and we never shied away from that shit. So yeah, fearless and 50, there you go. Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah, handguns, yeah. Yeah, yeah, Gen X girls are getting mosh pits and shit. Yeah, but I honestly I say that, like, on my videos and stuff, and I don't know if y'all think it's, like, me just talking shit or whatever, but I honestly believe that after the initial, whatever takes the grid out and the apocalypse, whatever happens, the pole flips or whatever, after everything washes out and we're in a post-apocalyptic world, Gen X is gonna rule that bitch because we're still in pretty damn good shape. We've got experience. The younger generations are gonna look to us as leaders because, we're gonna be sitting there. Think about it. You're sitting there at a campfire and you're eating some shit, and these hungry people are gonna come up, and look at you as some kind of super hero or something, some kind of like you're special because you got a rabbit, you know what I'm saying? And they haven't eaten in 3 days. Everybody, just the ability to do these things is gonna put Gen X on the next level above everybody else. So, and then the older generations, they're gonna be too old. Now that's if it happens relatively soon within the next 20 years. After that, when we're in our late 70s and we're starting to go away, well, it's gonna be different then. We're not gonna be able to chase down those rabbits anymore. But yeah, I sincerely think and I hope for the younger generations, honestly, in a lot of ways, I hope that we are around and we can still get around and shit when it happens. Because if it happens after we're completely gone, they're screwed. They're just screwed. The only people are going to be left are the tribes in South America and uh, Africa and stuff. The people who are living close to the land already, because everybody else, they they can't walk in they can't walk into McDonald's and get their food, they can't even go through the drive-through. They have Uber Eats or whatever, just bring it to them. It just appears, you know. So they're so far removed from actual gathering of nutrients that they would just it would be really crazy to watch. Yeah. Yeah, KS, exactly. We have the knowledge and the experience. A lot of us have done it already. I mean, I've gone out and hunted to feed myself and my family. I've done that. My brother's done that. We've done that. We, eating rattlesnakes. I've eaten porcupine and turtle and all kinds of out of the wild. So I know I kind of have an idea of what that kind of stuff is like, where a lot of people just don't. They have no idea. And they can eat a rattlesnake. If they saw a rattlesnake, they'd run away, even if they were hungry. Where an hour after I see a rattlesnake, I'm gonna have a full belly. You know what I'm saying? I'm that damn thing's gonna have 0 chance of with me around. Yeah, I know how to cook that joker, yeah, and I'm not afraid. I know how to deal with it, I know how to dispatch it, I know how to cook it, and I damn sure know how to eat it. So, yeah. Would I ever get biotech body parts? No. No, I just would not. I would not let them, not because, and here's the thing, artiste, not because it wouldn't interest me, you know what I mean? That shit, yeah, because I like that cyberpunk shit, I'm not gonna lie. I used to play that cyberpunk. They have I don't know if y'all have ever heard of it, but they have, you played D&D before, with your character sheets and stuff. Well, they have a game just like that called Cyberpunk. And I used to play that. We'd make our characters and stuff, and it was cool, and that would be cool. But I just don't trust any corporation that would put some shit in me. You know what I mean? I don't trust them. They have trackers and mics and cameras in there, hidden shit that would track me and do. I don't know what else they would do. I don't know what kind of technology they put in that thing that I wouldn't know about. So, yeah, that's the reason, not because I'm just adverse to that kind of technology, that I'm afraid of it or whatever. If I knew that I could trust it, yeah, I might do it just to be super strong or something. But I just don't trust any corporation that would do that. I don't trust any corporation to do anything, anytime, anywhere. They're scumbags, they're liars, they're just after our freedom and our money, and that's it. They're about that stock market and that bottom line. So if they can sneak some shit in there that would make them a few extra bucks, they're gonna do it 100%. So no, I wouldn't do it because of that, because I don't trust the corporations who would be doing it, not because I'm adverse to the technology or anything. Yeah, Buffalo. Yeah, artiste. That they would give you a new, let's say they would give you a new heart or a new arm or a new leg or something, and you're bionic and you're like the bionic man and shit, right? But what it would do, what they do, you'd have to pay a monthly subscription. They'd have it connected to Wi-Fi to a cell tower or something, and you'd have to pay a monthly subscription, or it'd just be a dead piece of metal on your arm that you're lugging around. You know what I mean? If you didn't pay. So yeah, everything's a subscription model. You'd have to pay for the rest of your life to have your arm or your heart or your whatever. And yeah, that's where it's going. And we all know it. Look at it. They're just gonna rob us, and that's it. So no, I'd rather just stay au natural than give those slimy pieces of shit an extra dime of my money. Yeah. Yeah, artiste. Yeah, with that whole cyber link thing, or well, I don't know what the thing is, but I think he's got good intentions for paraplegic people and stuff overall, but the potential for that kind of technology to be turned toward harmful and greedy and manipulative ends is just overwhelming. So no, I'm distrustful of those companies. Yeah. Yeah, and they taste good, Snyder. Porcupines taste good. That's good shit. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, Artis. Yeah, they do a subscription model on us. Yeah, and that you're right. Exactly. Again, vintage, you hit the nail on the head, is our mindset. We can do it. And that's what a lot of these younger generations, they've gotten away from that mindset because they've never been forced to do anything. Us Gen Xers, and this is so important and it's always overlooked. Us Gen Xers grew up latchkey kids. We had to come home and we had to do shit that we thought we couldn't do, but we had no other choice. If we didn't do it, we didn't get to eat dinner, or we didn't get to do whatever. I can't build a bicycle until I have to, and then I found out I could at the age of 8 or whatever I was, with absolutely no help. My dad wouldn't help me build a bicycle or any shit like that. So I had to do it myself. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to make macaroni and cheese until I did it. We learn so much just by doing shit. And as a child, that imprints on your brain, your psyche, your consciousness, that you can do things that you thought you couldn't. But now I hear this all the time. Oh, I can't. I can't. You don't know the definition of that word. If you're saying that, you can, you just don't want to. You don't want to. I get it. You don't want to. It's not worth your time, whatever. But don't say you can't, because I've done too many things that I thought I couldn't do, and then to find out that I can. I obviously I can do them. I was wrong. I can do this. I was just afraid to do it, or I was lazy, or whatever prevented me from doing it before. But I can, and that's the mindset Gen X has. We can. I know I can. Oh, we can't survive the apocalypse. Watch me. I can. Now, I might not survive the apocalypse, but I know I can. It's possible. I can do it. So, that kind of stuff. And that is so important, that mindset. The can do versus, can't do. Oh, I can't. I can't walk to the store. It's 5 miles away. Okay. What are you going to do when there's no Uber, there's no store, there's nothing. You're going to find out what you can do, or just sit there and starve to death. Yeah, endurance and stamina. Yeah, vintage. That's my alarm. I actually have to go. That's my alarm telling me I gotta get ready for work and head out of here. Yeah. Yeah. What will we do when we run out of that? KS, I have no idea. People are gonna, but now I gotta say goodbye here. Yeah, make it still. Yeah. Yeah. And there's just so much information and knowledge that Gen X knows that these other younger generations just have no idea, and don't even know that the knowledge exists, let alone, you know, that how to do it. So, all right. Artiste, KS, Snyder. Yeah, yeah. The world's about to smack him in the face, huh? Metal Gear Punisher. What's up, buddy? I'm just about to leave, man. Vintage, Bucky. Who else is here? I need to say goodbye to everybody. Did I say Artiste, Snyder? I just want to thank y'all for showing up. If I missed you calling out your name just now, I apologize. All I have to go by is the chat here, and I'm scrolling past because I got to get going. But thank all of you for showing up and visiting with me. I appreciate it. I'll do a live stream tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon Eastern time. I need to put up the times for everybody else, like Vintage and Lone Wolf Prepper, so y'all know in your time zones when it's going to be. But when I get some time, I will. But tomorrow I'll do another live stream, and like I said, from now on, these will be every Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon, or in Vintage's time frame, it's every Saturday evening and Sunday morning, maybe something like that. All right. Well, thank all of you for showing up. I appreciate it. I have a great time with these. Great discussions, great comments. We got a great group here, awesome group, and I'll see you. I'll see you on the next one. All right, stay frosty, Gen X.